Hi, I'm Melanie, and my life has turned right upside down ever since I met my stepmother. You won't believe it, but the first thing she told me was that she lives with 8 men, and she was glad to have me living with her. Before I go ahead and tell you about my stepmother and her 8 men, let me tell you a little bit about myself and how I got to this point in my life. You see, my mom was the most amazing woman. She was sweet and caring, and was always there for me and my dad when we needed her. Growing up, she'd encourage me to follow my dreams and study hard to become a strong and confident young woman. She drove me to dance lessons every single week and talked to me about my problems when I had issues with my friends at school. Yeah, my mother was the greatest parent a girl like me could wish for. But a few years back, she began to look so tired all the time and would always be pale, no matter if she was for hours under the sunlight. It was harder and harder for her to even get out of bed, and eventually, she began jumping from doctor to doctor. No one could figure what was going on with her. She was just withering away, and every day, things seemed worse and worse. Finally, after some more tests were run, we discovered the terrible truth. Mom had cancer, and by that point, there wasn't anything the doctors could really do to help her. Sure, they tried a few treatments, but those were so painful and exhausting. She couldn't even stand on her own after she came back from the hospital and could barely eat at all. It was as if she was disappearing in front of my very eyes, and believe me, it was hard to see. Dad was heartbroken and took a few months off work so he could be around my mom and me. We spent lots of time together, trying to make the most of the few days we had together. Finally, the most devastating day arrived. Mom didn't wake up one morning. Dad called an ambulance, but we already knew the inevitable truth. She was gone. And that was it. The next few months were rough. I cried all the time and barely managed to pay any attention to school. I even stopped hanging out with most of my friends, but little by little, their support helped me get through the darkest of days. I began getting over Mom leaving us in such a sudden way. I will never forget her, and certainly will never, ever stop needing her. But I learned to accept that she won't be around any longer. So one day, a bit over the anniversary of Mom's last night with us, my dad asked to talk to me in our living room. He had big news for me, and I wasn't sure if that was a good or a bad thing. "What's up, Daddy? What did you want to tell me?" I was 16 back then, and anxious about another big change in my life. And oh boy, the change was about to knock me off my feet completely. "Melanie, I met this woman at my office," he started, and I immediately crossed my arms, getting super defensive. "What do you mean you met someone? Like, are you dating her?" I snapped, feeling incredibly hurt. "Well, yes, honey, I'm dating her. Her name is Janice, and she's truly a wonderful woman," he assured me, but I wasn't too happy about it. "So how long have you been seeing her?" "A few months," he admitted, and I gasped, feeling shocked and betrayed. "How come you didn't tell me before?" I anxiously protested. Dad managed to calm me down and explain to me that he couldn't simply tell me when he first started dating this Janice woman. If he did, then it didn't work out, it would all be for nothing. "I didn't want to say anything until I was sure it was serious," he explained, and I looked away. It hurt so much that he was replacing my mom, but didn't Dad deserve happiness as well? He couldn't sit all alone all his life and long for a woman who was long gone. So, how serious is it? I asked, not really wanting to know the answer, but needing to find out. "Very, Melanie. I asked her to marry me, and she said yes." Believe me, I was so shocked. I couldn't even deal with it. So instead of acting as a grown woman, I decided to be childish and rushed up the stairs into my room. I locked myself in there and Dad knocked on the door, insisting I let him in. I wasn't ready to talk to him yet, so I screamed for him to leave me alone. It took me a few days to come around and actually speak to my father again. I knew I was being unfair, but it really hurt so much. I felt like we were forgetting all about Mom. "I'll never, ever forget your mother, darling. She was the love of my life. But Janice is really special, and she makes me happy. Don't you want me to be happy?" He reasoned with me when I finally agreed to sit down and talk again. "Yes, of course I want you to be happy," I replied. and reluctantly accepted to meet this woman he was so in love with. Much to my surprise, Janice was really lovely. She had the same kind of smile my mom did before she got sick, and was so sweet. She immediately gave me a hug when we met. I couldn't help but feel comfortable around her. The idea of having her as my stepmom didn't seem so bad after all. She could help with my homework and actually cook a good meal when I came back from school. Dad was the worst cook ever, and we had to have takeaway so often. Still, even though I liked her, it seemed a bit soon for them to be getting married in only a week's time. It seemed like they were rushing into things. But Janice had lost her husband 3 years ago, and had so much in common with my dad. They clearly made each other very happy, and I didn't want to be the reason why they put the wedding off. So I reluctantly agreed and began helping them plan it all in a rush. It was while I was helping my new stepmother pick her dress that I discovered another shocking piece of news. It's so nice to be able to speak about dresses and hairstyles with a girl. After all, I've always shared my house with 8 men, she told me while trying on one of the dresses. I gasped and looked absolutely shocked at her. What do you mean? Like you have 8 husbands? I screamed, clearly confused about the whole situation. Janice chuckled earnestly, and she shook her head immediately, waving her hand dismissively. Of course not, Melanie. I have 8 sons. Most are twins, but they are all boys. And I'm really looking forward to having a daughter at last, she replied, smiling so earnestly. I was stunned. I mean, now not only I would have a new mom, but 8 brothers. That was so overwhelming, but in a good way. It felt nice, like I wouldn't have to be so alone all the time. There would always be someone to talk to, someone who'd be around in the house. Are they nice? I asked timidly, and she laughed again, nodding and hugging me. They are lovely young men, I promise. They are all looking forward to meeting their new sister, she assured me, and that made me feel much better. The wedding was absolutely incredible, and I got to meet all 8 of my new brothers. Half were older than me, and 2 went to college. The rest were younger, and there was even a 5-year-old who was the cutest kid in the world. It was so sweet. They started treating me like their little sister from the very beginning. It was insane being part of such a big family now, after being alone with Dad for over a year. But it was the good kind of insane. We all moved into a bigger house after the wedding. My dad and stepmom sold their houses and got a massive place where we all had our own rooms. Sure, we got in arguments every once in a while, but mostly, I really grew to love my big, new family. And Janice is the best stepmom I could have ever asked for. I still miss my mother dearly, but I'm sure she would be happy that Dad and I found a new family. Thanks for watching! What's the biggest surprise your parents gave you? Tell us all about it in the comments. Don't forget to check out other videos on the channel, and subscribe to be notified for updates.